Alright, Community Bible Study. Here we are with video number 2 for the week, right? So this should be interesting, and I'm hoping that we can really be able to chew on these quicker videos, shorter videos. I really hope you guys are taking the time to watch through them. And then also, make comments. Guys, feel free. If this isn't something you want to see and this is not doing it for you guys, let me know. I want to try to get, I'm just trying to get some of the information out there that we go through the class. For those of us who do not get to come to class on Sunday mornings for whatever reason, it gives us the opportunity to really connect, even though we are not able to come together. So if this is, just comment, send me some messages, let me know what you think about this process. With that, I want to go ahead and transition us into the next phase of Paul's letter. We're still in chapter 1 on Galatians, and we're going to be reading through. We're going to be kind of spending the next few videos on the verses 11 through 24. So just kind of, we're going to branch out and transition into Paul's testimony, Paul being called by God. We're going to be answering the question that we just spoke about on the previous video of how can Paul, with authority, say that the gospel that he preached is the only gospel. And we're really going to try to dive into that within the next couple of videos. And for right now, I want to hang out with just a couple of the verses that we're in. So I'm going to hang out in chapter 1, verse 11 and 12. They're what I would call transitional verses for Paul as he transitions from, we're going to, this is the one true gospel, the one that I preach is one true gospel, and anything that anybody else says, to add on to it or to take away from it, well, that's not right. It's totally wrong, and it will lead you guys straight to hell, basically, is how he's stating it. And then he goes in and he says, he transitions to, "For I would have you know, brothers, that the gospel that was preached by me is not man's gospel. For I did not receive it from any man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through the revelation of Christ." So you understand where he's heading with this? You see, he can speak with authority on the gospel because the gospel that he delivers to them, no other man gave it to him. You see, when Paul was converted, he was a Pharisee. And for Pharisees under training, a lot of times their training and their knowledge of the first 5 books of the Bible and the law and all that came from another man. And a lot of times those mentors, such as the one Paul had, those mentors would probably change the law a little bit to make it kind of benefit them, if you will. And so on and so forth. And throughout the years, that information would change. And Paul would see it firsthand how corruption could seep into the law of God and how the Pharisees would use that to their advantage. And Paul knew that when he was speaking to the Galatian people, and the Galatian people were hearing from different types of religions, and they were getting influenced by the Judaizers, and they were being influenced by the other Gentiles who were worshiping many other gods, and they were all coming together, and they were saying, well, I don't know, this isn't it. You got to do this too. Or the Judaizers were saying, hey, you know what? In order for you to be saved, you can't just believe in the gospel. You got to go out and get circumcised as well. And circumcision is really the true form of how you do it. And Paul was blowing away that opposition. He was coming in here and saying, look, that is wrong, and that there is only one way, and there's only one true gospel. And so now we're going to hear from Paul in these next couple videos, and we're going to be hearing where Paul was coming from on this. Excuse me. I should have gotten some water, but I didn't. So once again, Paul says that he received this from no man, but he received it through the revelation of Jesus Christ. And so in order for us to really grasp that, we got to jump back a few books into the book of Acts, and we got to really look at Paul's conversion in the book of Acts. If you remember, Paul had just gotten done pretty much holding on to the coats and approving of the stoning and the killing of Stephen, and then he was off, and he went up to the king, and he was saying, King, the head Pharisee actually, and he was saying, there are many Christians, many followers of that Jesus guy over in a town called Damascus, and I want you to give me the approval to take a few men and go over there and destroy those followers of Jesus. And so Saul at the time, his name was Saul, he gets his men, he gets approval from the Pharisees, and buddy, he's off, he's gone. He was very zealous, and you hear more about it when he writes in his verses how he was zealous for the destruction of those who followed Christ. And so he went with haste, basically, all the way to Damascus, gets halfway there, and all of a sudden something happens. There's a bright light, if I remember if there's a bright light, scales cover his eyes, he's completely blinded, comes in total contact with Jesus in that scenario. And Jesus then speaks through that, and he says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And as it would, he has set the path for Saul to go into the town of Damascus, where he was headed to kill Christians, and he was told to meet up with the Christian was to bless him. And once that happened, once Paul did that, the scales fell off his eyes, he could see, and he went away. He went away basically into the wilderness to learn, and you learn straight from Jesus. And there's more about that. If you want to hear more about that, please drop me a line. We'll have a discussion on how that worked. But he had one-on-one time. He went away from anybody who could influence him, and he had one-on-one time with Jesus. And Jesus taught him, and that is where he came through the revelation of the gospel through Jesus Christ. And so when he speaks of that, you hear that coming out of it. And you hear his past experiences working through that, so that they know that, that nobody told him this but Jesus himself. And we'll discuss more about how that transpires and how that affects his relationship with the other disciples and what happens from there. So kind of keep that in mind as we continue to push on through this. In the next video, we'll be looking at verses 13 to 14 and really kind of seeing where, Paul, rehashing Paul's conversion experience. Hey guys, let me briefly, as we start doing this, my prayer is that you guys will reflect on yourselves a little bit and remember your conversion experience. What was that like? In the comments below, if you guys feel so led, tell me what was your conversion like? I know mine was interesting. It took me a few years actually, but mine was an interesting scenario, and love to share with you guys on how that went. And then as we really kind of play with these verses and look at them, just think about that. Think about what it was like. Think about your interaction with Christ. And you guys, if you haven't had that interaction, let me know. Send me a private message up here. Send me a private message and say, Kirby, you talked about having a one-on-one encounter with Christ, and I don't know what that means. Well, shoot me a message, and I'll share with you what I mean by that. Because, the same interaction, the same encounter that Paul had with Jesus, each one of us, if we call ourselves followers of Christ, each one of us had an encounter just like that. It wasn't as, as mind-blowing, I guess, if you will. It wasn't as upfront like what Paul did, but you know what? Paul was a different man, and for each of us, our encounter with Christ was different, right? So think about that after this video, and if you feel so led to jot down some things in the comments, feel free to do so. Hit that like button as well. And then if you guys want to know more about Jesus and want to know more about that encounter, and you don't want anybody else to see it, feel free to shoot me a message, and I'll be glad to respond to that. You set up a time either to talk or just respond in the most appropriate way. Okay? So until next time, we'll please look at that, and then feel free to read ahead and know that we'll be studying on a couple more verses on the next video. Okay? Thank you guys. Know that I'm praying for you. Love you guys. Bye.